like to call the Wilton Board of Education meeting to order. Just want to note the date. How often is February 20, 2020 going to happen? Not till... It'll happen a few more times this year, and then we're done for a while. So just a little bit of trivia. Okay, has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
All right, I would like a motion to approve and at the same time move item D1, the board chair's report, to right after E1. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda with that change?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, approved. Comments from the public? All right, moving along. Consent agenda. Is there a move to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Superintendent's report.
Great, I have a number of items to update the board on. The first section here is the good news edition of the superintendent's report. So we have some congratulations. Our 6 national merit semifinalists are now 6 national merit finalists.
Great.
So we want to
Right.
congratulate Ashley Coltman, Madden Hervé, Jeffrey Huang, Alexander Koutsoukis, Rishab Ranawala, and Vignesh Subramanian. We also want to congratulate several young ladies in our high school. Looks like 2 juniors and a senior. So first, Sandra Bakchi, Anusha Shegu, who are both the 2020 winners of the Connecticut National Center for Women and Information Technology Award for Aspirations in Computing. It's a mouthful, but terrific.
Great.
We want to recognize Bronwyn Walsh, grade 11, who also earned honorable mention in that contest. These young women were recognized for their computing-related aspirations and demonstrated outstanding aptitude and interest in information technology and computing. Their applications were noted for including examples of their solid leadership ability, exceptional academic history, and forward-thinking ability that distinguished each of them as remarkable young women in the field of computing. So, congratulations to those 3. We also need to congratulate our girls and boys ski teams who swept last week and finished the boys in particular finished the season undefeated. Both teams won the Class S championship. I'd also like to note for the record 2 things. The boys team is a 3-time winner, and last week they beat Ridgefield, a Class L opponent. Things didn't go so well last night, Debbie.
I know.
Another story, though. Last night was tough.
All right, moving on. This morning, the newly formed District Equity and Inclusion Team met for the first time. We met over at Michael Gordon's room at Middlebrook at 7:30. This committee consists of staff members from each of our schools. Chuck participated, Karen Brennicky, and we had 1 parent from Miller Driscoll. The purpose of the committee is to explore issues of race, equity, and inclusion in the district, to develop plans to provide professional learning, and look at and improve our practices around cultural competence. I will say I was really pleased with the strong support and the strong interest among our staff. We've had lots of conversations taking place in pockets across the district for some time. The administrators have engaged in some work this year, and as we've kind of moved forward with the staff, people are hungry for a conversation. And so, this morning was kind of the next step in that. And so as we move forward, we have plans to make plans, I think is the best way to summarize that. So we'll be meeting probably in another 10 days or so. And then we'll come back to the board with, some clearer thinking on what those plans are, what our areas of focus are. We need to do a little bit of auditing and some other prep work as we get going. Chuck, you want to add anything?
No, I just that we're going to probably approach this the same way we approached SEL and do some work around adults first so that the adults feel comfortable with conversations around race and equity before we start embarking on those conversations with students as well. So I think for the remainder of this year and probably into next year, our focus will be on professional learning and adults. And then we'll talk about how that might be rolled out with students.
Okay,
Yeah, great.
important work.
Yep, that's it for my report.
Okay. Committee reports, teaching and learning.
We met
last week. We took a look at their nutrition and homework policies and have sent them on to the policy committee to, I guess, make the final decision. We also talked a lot about, talked a little bit about planning for future meetings.
Yes.
And then the other big topic was communication with teachers. And Kevin had his first one today. He's been reaching out to all of the schools and having a cookies and conversation with them. And I thought the first one today was nice and successful. And there were some teachers there that came and kind of shared some of their concerns and comments. So it was nice to have. And then there's an Ela survey that did it go out?
No,
It's going out.
it's going out
That will go out to the ELA teachers
tomorrow.
just asking about, curriculum and any comments that they have to make. It's pretty in-depth survey. And that's pretty much it.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Has policy had a chance to meet?
Next week.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to
Well, you're gonna have nutrition and homework.
Listen, I know two things on the agenda.
And the first thing you can probably do is change cookies and conversation to
Yes.
Broccoli and business.
kale salad.
I told you I'll be so pleased with me.
Okay, business operations.
We met yesterday, and three real items that we went over were the financial report, which you'll see tonight, and questions about that and the structure and the results that we're going to be seeing tonight. We'll go over in some detail and we'll present. Secondly, was discussion around the budget proposal as it currently exists, and what we'll be discussing this evening. And the third item was really an effort on Kevin's part to try and get a handle on ratios, non-student facing ratios, non-classroom student facing ratios, and how we stack up and how we compare and our changes over the last 4 or 5 years in that regard. And these are music teachers, psychologists, counselors, those people that are certified staff that is not a classroom teacher. And what can we do with that? What guidance does it give us in our budget prep? And as we look to the future, what our needs are. Discuss national levels of ratio and how we stack up on a national basis, comparatively speaking, which is not always a good thing. Our needs are not the needs of a city in Nebraska, perhaps, of our size, but anyway, so that's an effort that's currently underway and still needs some refinement. And as with any data that we look at, some of it isn't necessarily timely, nor is it completely comparative, because you don't know the inputs that you're looking at and what those inputs were. But at least it gives us some guidance going forward, hopefully. Yeah. And that was about it.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else to add on committee reports? Okay, questions or comments? That leads us to the financial report that Glenn referred to, and is that something Ann will take us through?
So the main items that changed for the summary report, I added on what the estimated excess cost would be. The state has published their numbers for us and what they think they're going to give us for the end of the year. It's about a 0.9% less than last year. They shaved a little bit off. The state, on the state website, though, it is saying they're keeping the level funding for all the state the same, but we got cut a 0.9%. That will explain, for those of you who aren't used to it, is that we show a deficit in our budget variances of about $1.5 million. That's because the revenue that's coming in from the excess costs sits on the town side of the budget, but the expenditures happen through the Board of Ed and their unbudgeted expenditures because of that reason. So we have a couple of different items. If you take a look through the report, one of the questions that did come up at the ops meeting was in relation to our budget amendments and what's in those budget amendments. A lot of those changes, you can see on the top line for salaries, how come we increased it 400,000? It looks odd. That's where we added Genesis. Because if you recall, the original budget was 81 million and change, and then Genesis got added in. So I needed to reflect it that way of what the original budget was and added in. Then we had a couple of different changes between, and we still will have this ongoing for this year, because of setting up the budget originally before we got our payroll up and running, there's a slight difference of where the budget was originally set up and where it actually should be. So we have a couple of personnels that will switch back and forth and made a couple of changes. It's not gonna change the overall budget, it's gonna net to zero still, the changes, but we're just gonna reclassify them into the right categories. As I mentioned last month, we did have a lease that we weren't aware of, so that is covered. We're able to cover that. We had some savings in OPEB, pension, and our general liability, which is our umbrella insurance, our general insurance. So the percentage that we budgeted, we changed to a new company. We changed to Travelers July 1st, and we saw some savings in changing to that new umbrella company. Unfortunately, that is going up for next year because the industry right now for umbrella and general liability coverage, industry as a whole, not just towns, it has gone up. So we're seeing that effect, unfortunately. But at least we stepped back a bit to go forward. And that's the main items right now. We're still on target for our budget to do all the things that we want to do. Talk to Andrea in regards to SPED. We're still on target. Nothing yet that would pop out of us to show any concerns. So we're in good shape right now. I'd open up for any questions.
Questions?
Did the state percentage went down for us from last year?
Point 9, I remember, yeah. But the overall funding for the whole state stayed, they said they were keeping it flat funding.
Yeah.
So were there other towns, like in our DIRC, that were also cut?
I didn't go in and look at ours. I can do that and send that out for you, so I can drop down and look at different towns.
Singled out.
No, I'm just thinking they're reallocating again. That's what they typically do, so. It's not to say that they may not change. That's where it's standing right now. And last year, we were somewhat in the same position, where we weren't sure what the end result would be. The estimate actually was lower, so we did get some money more than we expected. I would hope that would happen again, but, I'm gonna err on the side of caution to make sure we cover the bottom line.
So is that about a 75%?
Yeah. funding
Return
for it.
rate?
Yeah.
Which is where the state's
For
been
the state total,
for a number of
their
years.
program is 75%. We got
The funding that for us, it's about 75 that they fund us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? So this will come out again next month, right?
Yes.
So we'll have a better handle on special ed, for instance, or if anything changes.
If anything changes, and you'll see a
Okay.
lot more adjustments, but it's more cleanup than anything.
All right. Well, thanks for all that, especially moving to New World and
Yes.
getting actuals and last year and moving forward. It's confusing, so thank you. Okay, what's next? Review and discuss the process for exploring Middlebrook schedule.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hey. I brought my peeps tonight, so I'm gonna have them just introduce themselves. Damien, you start us off?
Damien Whelan, Dean, Middlebrook.
Janet Nobles, Stride Instructional Leader at Middlebrook.
Polly Metz, special ed teacher at Middlebrook.
Mike McLaughlin, writing workshop teacher at Middlebrook.
And I'm Lauren. I work with them. So Janet's gonna start us off, I think.
So talking about the Middlebrook schedule. As you know, this is something we've been talking about for years. I can look at Maria and say I remember 4 years ago when we sat at as a scheduling committee for at least 4 months, working so hard, looking at every schedule in our DIRG and what can we relate to and how can we get an intervention block in our school. And we worked and worked and ended up saying, we can't. This isn't going to work. We can't make it work. So we went a couple of other years and tried to make things go as they were. And last year, Kevin came down and said, let's try to get a schedule committee going again. We gotta figure out, we gotta get some more math time in our schedule this time. And so we started meeting weekly with Kevin. And we looked at even further out throughout the state and the country at schedules and what will work for us. And again, struggling, grappling with it, not having any real outcome at the end that was tangible. So this year, Lauren came to me and some others and said, there's this staff development happening with NELMS. And it's about finding the schedule that fits your program and meets the needs of your school. Do you want to go? And we're like, yeah. So a group of us went, a small group. There was six of us there, and had a great experience working with these superintendent and assistant superintendent from Massachusetts. And they had a really great way of having us really focus on, your schedule shows the priorities of your school. Let's really look at this. And we plowed through all this stuff, and we came back feeling like we need to change our schedule. It doesn't reflect where we are anymore. We were passionate about it. So we came to the staff and shared all of that. And now we are at the point where we've shared with the staff, we brought the staff together, we've come up with, yet again, but new and improved, a schedule working group that has a large amount of the staff in it. And we have decided that we are going to conquer this problem. We're going to solve our scheduling issues. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you, Jen.
Sure.
So as you know, math instruction has been a hot topic in district, particularly at the secondary level, for a number of years. At board meetings such as this, we've also heard discussions and statements about inadequate instructional time at Middlebrook. So that has also been reinforced by some experts such as Steve Leinwand, and really looking to increase instructional time to a goal of 1 hour. And this idea of 1 hour primarily came from the math curriculum committee that was underway 2 years ago and kind of came to culmination this past school year.
So really, the Middlebrook faculty are the experts in young adolescent instruction, and we want to make sure that their voices are heard throughout. We had spent several weeks having a lot of whole group discussion. It's a really charged issue, as you can imagine, right? These are people who their life work is invested in teaching Wilton's children at middle school level. So it is emotionally charged also because if you take time from one program and give it to another, ultimately it does impact the professional staffing levels at the school. And so we just want to take a moment before we shift to talking about the smaller working group that we've now formed to really sing the praises of the staff for the way that they really dug into that conversation. They asked wonderful questions. They came forward with all kinds of things that we really need to consider. And we're not looking to adopt some other town's schedule. We're looking to build a schedule that really embraces and works on behalf of our values and what we know is best for Wilton children. And so we just really want to sing the praises of that work, the whole staff, and to reiterate the fact that keeping the staff engaged in the conversation is going to be the work throughout the rest of this process. We're dedicating a great deal of the remaining staff time of the year for the working group that you're going to hear more about to come back and interface with the whole staff and make sure that we're using all of the think tank that we have there.
So we thought we'd share the next portion of the presentation, just some of the factors driving the discussion. As you know, the conversation started last year, focused primarily around math and the quantity of math instruction. Through some of our work with NELMS and just internal conversations, we've expanded beyond the notion of just it being a math conversation. We look to really expand that to all of our subject areas, but particularly focusing on the 4 core academics: ELA, math, social studies, and science.
And over the past few years, a lot of our academic areas have had a revision of their curriculum. So there's a big learning curve with all of that, and through that, a lot of the interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary projects the teams were working on kind of fell on the to the wayside. Also, a lot of the curriculum is more student-centered learning, and it's more of a set program. So through all of this, we're trying to really work on, there's a huge passion in our school for transdisciplinary work, and we know that we can achieve that more if we focus on both the core content and getting our teachers to work together to come up with some great ideas that kids can work towards in the transdisciplinary project-based learning. This kind of work we have to think about 2 things, not only the student time that they can collaborate, but also teacher time, so that we have time to engage in our collaborative preparation.
While the main area of concern for us isn't necessarily the declining enrollment, we do want to keep that into take that into account while we are setting up structures. We want to make sure that those structures are malleable and that they can change with us as we decline in enrollment moving forward.
So another thing we're really committed to is remediating our problematic achievement gap. Our performance in our data shows that we are not adequately growing our high-need students. High-need students being students with IEPs, students who are English language learners, and students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And we also want to lump in with that group, we want to really help support our students in intervention and AIM programs. Our current schedule has some constraints that limit the way we can flexibly deploy the great resources we have at Middlebrook. And we want to create a fully responsive, personalized program to reach all of our varied learners. So our aim with this scheduler working group is to have a plan that grows all of our students and helps to eliminate that opportunity gap for learning for some of our students in the higher needs populations.
So after having several group discussions, large staff discussions, we came to the conclusion that we weren't going to solve this problem with all 101 certified staff members in the room having the discussion at the same time. So we decided to have some people step up and volunteer. So we decided to have some people step up and volunteer, and we were very pleased with the diversity of different type of teachers and people who stepped forward to join our committee and have this conversation moving forward.
I love the diversity of our presenters tonight in terms of where they are in their career. I think we're really trying to get a cross-section.
And so one of our first areas of business was to decide what our mission statement was, to ground ourselves in what we believed and what our fundamental values were. So I'll give you all a moment to read our mission statement at this time.
So in the past, we've really focused on tweaking schedules. The committee that met 4 years ago was just trying to massage minutes here and there. What we're really moving into is kind of starting with a clean slate and looking at how we allocate all our time across all of our subject areas. And to guide us in that endeavor, we looked at some guideposts such as the mission statement, Middlebrook mission statement, philosophy, the Middlebrook theory of action, and obviously the portrait of the graduate has also been a key element. And then we've also brought in some additional supports, our philosophies for each program. We've also had support from our ILs, our curriculum coordinators. Chuck has been in to visit, and Kevin was always at hand as well. And then finally, another interesting piece is just taking a look at what our Durgay counterparts are doing, and even beyond that, really getting feedback from our fellow tri-state members.
So you've seen our team members, and our first goal as we started meeting, we're meeting every Tuesday in case you ever want to stop by. We meet every Tuesday afternoon for an hour and a half, and our first job was to come up with that mission that you've just read. From there, after learning why we were moving forward, we created our norms and our mission and our plan for what we were going to do. So we want to share that plan with you tonight. So I want to let you know what we already have done and what we plan to do over the next few months. So far, we have brought in the specialists in our district on all of the subject areas. So we had a meeting where we met with humanities and STEM coordinators and with Chuck, who came to share with us the best practices of ELA, math, science and social studies, and world language, looking at what's the ideal, what do we need to have in terms of minutes, in terms of commitment, in terms of how curriculum is changing, and all the things we're looking at to make sure that everyone in the committee is up to speed on all of those areas. The next meeting we had the K-12 ILs from PE Health, Music, and Art, as well as people representing all of our STRIDE classes. In addition to those, Family Consumer Science and iSTEM and Health that we talked about, Digital Citizenship, and probability and statistics, and talking about the curriculum of all those areas and what the optimal amount of minutes they are to have per class and sessions per year and all of those things. Everyone really had a chance to ask all the questions they had about those classes and what they pertain to. And the important thing as we spent 2 meetings listening and speaking to all these people, is the diversity of the people on the committee is so important. We have administrators and teachers, we have parents, and making sure that the parents are as up to speed as we are on what's being offered, whether their child's a part of it or not. So that's what we've covered so far. Our next step is to focus on social emotional instruction and what the goals for the district are over the next few years and how that should be looked at from the point of the schedule from Middlebrook. Will that be incorporated in all classes in a specific class? How will those things be assessed and brought into the school? The next thing is to look at our subgroups in terms of our students who are in the AIM program, which is our additional instruction in math, our intervention for math and reading, our English language learners, special education, and free and reduced lunch. Understanding the groups, those specific groups, and as Polly was talking about, what's limiting their growth and what can the schedule do to assist and help with making more success for those students. After we discuss that, we want to define what is the optimal program at Middlebrook. Here's what we have. What do we need? Do we need more? Do we tweak the time that we have? Rebuild what we currly have? What changes need to be made in order for us to really have the optimum amount of all the coursework that our kids need? And then discuss the structures of them. That comes next. And as we know, that's building the graphs and coming up with Lauren's Lego structures that take so much time and so much care to make. It's rough. And the pros and cons of all these different possibilities of schedules. And ultimately, we hope by May to be able to make a recommendation for the schedule we would like to use at Middlebrook. Not next year, but giving us that year to be ready to then start at the following year of 21-22.
So like Janet was alluding to, we really want to make sure that all of our Middlebrook stakeholders have a voice and that their voices are heard. And so yesterday we had a wonderful whole staff discussion, updating everyone just like we're updating you about what we're up to and what our plan is. And next week we're actually going to have some smaller group discussions at our staff meeting led by our scheduling working group members to field some questions, receive some feedback, and then bring that to the table at our next meeting as a group. We've also, like Janice said, collaborated with our district leaders and ILs, and they brought forward some really valuable information for us. And also, Lauren's done an excellent job gathering all the information from our Durg A and Tri-State middle school counterparts, and we're hoping to compare and also collaborate in a way that we can come up with our own solution that works the Wilton way. And we are also hoping to potentially work with the NELMS consultants, Mark Bronco and Chris Pollitt, who I've heard wonderful things about. And we have 4 PTA reps on our schedule working group. And in the future, we hope to solicit feedback from parents and students via surveys and potentially some focus group work.
That's where we are so far. Just those few things.
Questions?
Questions, comments?
Just have your work cut out for you.
To think that the request for additional math instructional time has driven this major examination of how we're doing what we're doing is like, okay, thought it was going to be simple. How do you just carve out a little more math time? But it's, I think it's worth it. I think it, and I'm pleased to see that you're giving attention across the board, not just to math, but to all the subject areas and all the student needs. I think it's great. Do all of the middle schools that you looked at operate on a teams structure?
It is absolutely the hallmark of the kind of program that we would compare ourselves to.
Okay, so most,
Yes.
well,
It
do
is
all
the
the middle
norm.
school, all the middle schools have a team structure in there?
I'm not aware of it, but I don't think we've gotten any feedback from any school that is not teamed.
It's not teams, okay.
Correct.
'Cause that, I mean, that strikes me as being the middle school model.
Sure.
It should be.
And one of the things that we look at there is what's on the team,
Yeah.
right? So a 6-teacher team is actually a relatively unusual structure. So taking a look at how many teachers are on a team, so teaming can mean different things.
Yeah, okay, all right. And is that inhibiting or is it helping your work? the team structure? Or is it neutral? Working
I
for-
think, if I may, I think, I don't think there's a teacher at Middlebrook that'll tell you that teaming isn't at the heart of everything we do.
Okay.
So I think everyone realizes there might be some changes with the team structure in some way, but that's the way we know our students, and that's the way students feel.
Oh,
at home
and I
Middlebrook.
agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
All of the
just-
experts in the field will say that developmentally, it's the right thing.
Yeah.
And it really does allow us to have wraparound care.
Yeah.
And particularly we do have a passion to get back to that transdisciplinary work in a really meaningful way, and the sort of the 2.0 version of that collaborative work across the team. And those connections are, for sure, easier to make when they're in a teamed environment.
Well, yeah, I think where you are is wonderful, and the process that you've undertaken is just great, and will lead to a really remarkable piece of work at the end. I'm sure it will. So.
Third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm.
No, there's been more than 30.
Yeah. And thank you. It is
For
not,
some.
everyone has a vested interest in what they're doing, and they're passionate about it. So it's not an easy thing to bring all those disparate people together and have someone willing to give up a little of this for somebody else to get a little of that. It's not easy. And then you've got a broad spectrum of customers that you're trying to satisfy. So.
I would like to mention that one of the things that wasn't specifically mentioned tonight was one of the questions we are asking, because it would be just a real shame not to ask it, is when we look at our complement of courses, particularly within the stride area, we need to ask the question of, are there things that we're offering that don't align with our values and our vision? Which that side I find less pressing, honestly, than are there things that align with our values and our vision that we're not offering?
Yeah.
There's great joy in thinking, dreaming big, thinking in a really flexible way. But of course, anything that we add is, again, more time that has to come from something,
yeah.
right? And so I think Damien made the point, and even just that you saw the reaction to the word tweak, like we're really trying hard to start with the blank Etch-a-Sketch, in the sense that if we were going to just define the optimal program now, not just trying to shimmy what we
Right.
have. And I think that it's really affirming how much of what we have we think really is wonderful.
Good.
So that doesn't mean everything is going to change. It just means that we really want to look at this with fresh eyes of, if we started with a blank slate today, what would we want for our children?
Are you going to do like sort of a trial, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe in May of 2021?
That was
To
such
try
an
it out.
appealing thought because the high school was able to do it, right?
Right.
So it has everything to do with what the structure is. So we've worked some models. Honestly, we worked some models just to make sure that there was even an option that was possible. Because we didn't want to go into this work and commit huge amounts, and a lot of emotional energy into, and then come out and say, oh, we can't do it. Some of the models that we've looked at just as possibilities would do things like have a different number of teams. And so it would be very, very hard to run it just for a couple of weeks. I think that if there are things that we can test run along the way, I absolutely am in favor of that. And certainly we saw our colleagues do a great example of that. But I would be surprised if what we came out with would be easy to turnkey like that. I also think that a lot of the high school seniors were not there when they ran, like the flexibility is.
Any of the seniors were
Right.
there.
They were
That too.
internships.
So I think that I'm not sure that we'll
Could
have
do
the
an
same
8th grade
flexibility.
internship.
To the high school.
So we're trying to think as flexibly as we can, including things like, do all 3 grade levels need to look the same? Are there developmental differences between 6th and 8th that would cause us to look at things differently? And we're trying to look at our colleagues in other districts and see what the scope of the learning should be for us.
And are you going to be sending out notifications to parents as far as like surveys? I know you mentioned that you're going to be doing parent surveys. I've just heard some rumblings about people being concerned that there's too much time in math and not enough in stride, and when nobody knows anything about how they are, they always find like the worst. So
I will tell you that trying to write a plan for this process has been a really interesting there are many, many ways for people to say what they don't like about a plan. And to me, the best thing is to sort of let it follow an organic unfolding. So I'm not sure at exactly which point we will be ready. We will have things for parents to respond to. But absolutely, I would like to think that at 2 or 3 points, we will be soliciting some feedback from a body of parents. Now, some parts of that may be more like focus group, and some parts of it, I would like to have at least an opportunity for parents to weigh in by a thought exchange of some sort or a survey of some sort. But I think we would need to have some models to show before we could have really meaningful feedback.
Could you make sure everyone has this? All the parents have
For
this?
sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's reassuring,
Yes.
that it's comprehensive and thoughtful and they can see the timeline.
Yes.
My personal question about the timeline is, it's ambitious. Can you really do that?
It's super ambitious. So when we saw, honestly, the consultants had told us that in the time frame we were looking at, we could have had a new schedule for next year. And the fact of the matter is, we don't want to rush it. We want to, so the waiting for the additional year gives us the important time. And to me, the real push to have this settled by June is twofold. One is that this is emotionally taxing for the professionals involved, and that I think that people will have, the more certainty we can give people, I think will be a kindness to the professionals of Middlebrook. The more important side of that, I think, is that over the summer is really when we invest the time and really be thoughtful about the professional learning that people need during the course of a full academic year. I would really like for us to go into the summer and be able to do our curriculum work and our PD planning with the new schedule in mind, so that we make the best use of the learning in that interim year.
But your target is not for implementation until year after next.
Correct. Nothing structurally of any size. I will say, as of today, there's no planned change in the schedule structure, and if there is, it would be minor incidental tweaky things.
Okay.
Ruth, you had a question.
I was just going to say, as we worked through this, you had made 2 points that kind of struck me. One was that with a lot of the curriculum change that happened over the last couple of years, it was hard to incorporate the interdisciplinary opportunities. So I just think that it's important to be thoughtful as we move forward to make sure that we're not naive to think that we're not going to have other curriculum changes down the line, and to make sure that those types of opportunities and avenues and changes are workable within
Yes.
the new program as well.
Sure.
And that really, to, I think, coming back to the schedule reflecting the priorities and having this for parents, and maybe also a greater understanding of kind of what those priorities are. Because we have a portrait of a graduate, and that's, for middle school, that's, still down the road for parents. And I don't know, thinking about like what a 13-year-old can do versus what an 18-year-old can do, kind of like maybe kind of honing in a little bit of like, what do we see our children leaving Middlebrook looking like out of this, out of this process a bit. So we can kind of see that these are the priorities for those 3 years, and the schedule now reflects being able to achieve those priorities.
I think that when we think about priorities, the amount of time in a schedule does not necessarily reflect really the goal I think we have is to look at what are the outcomes that we need from that program. And one of the great pieces of information we have right now is how are we doing with our deliverables in each program with the time currently allotted. And that's a great guidepost for us, because really what we know is that everybody that we talk to wants more time. And every time we talk a lot about a program, we want to give it more time, right? Like, God, that's cool. The amount of things that our kids can do at Middlebrook are stellar, and they could spend twice as much time and continue learning. So one of the problems that we'll have is, trying to put 10 pounds of learning into a 5-pound bag. But so certainly I think that we can provide parents with resources. We can do a narrated version of this and send it out, and we'll do a tremendous amount of parent communication as we have things to communicate out. Right now, we had the PTA report this morning, and when the PTA reps were talking to me about what they were going to say, and it's the part that we're doing right now, while totally important, is not actually that exciting to report out on. Like, we're really learning the context of what's important about language arts instruction and what do you need in order to do that well, and what's important about music instruction, and what do you need to be able to do that well. But we will definitely try to, transparency is our shtick. We will try to bring everybody along as much as possible, with the caveat that one of the reasons you can't do this with 101 people in the same room is because there's not going to be a full consensus, and we know that. That's part of the transparency, is that ultimately some decisions are going to have to be made at administrative levels, and we just want to make them informed by all of the wisdom in the room.
Well, I do think this is reassuring to parents, and they understand that they don't have to be in the room on every single conversation, but just the fact that there is no model yet.
Yes.
There's no specifics yet.
Right.
There's a cross-section of people working on it, and here's a timeline.
Yes.
That's helpful to parents,
Yes.
so they don't get caught up in the rumor mill of, oh, did you hear? And gosh knows where that came from,
Yes.
but.
Yep, and at the end of the day, when people have questions, they can come forward and ask them, right? And the easiest thing is to send a question to me. I'm happy to have somebody else answer the question if that makes folks more comfortable. I can play just traffic cop with the questions, but we're very happy, like, if people are hearing things and they'd like some clarification, we really welcome the conversation.
And I think that that's a great idea. When you send this out to parents, just welcome them to ask the questions. I think you kind of hit it right. It's the rumor mill, right? It's the fear of the unknown.
Yep.
People don't know what's going on. People start talking. It just goes the wrong way.
3 out of our 4 parent representatives have children at the lower schools. So we certainly are, they're thinking with their, I'm going to have skin in the game experience as well.
And you have, she does, as you know, probably Tuesday is news day. Like every week she's communicating everything with the parents, so that you have that avenue of,
Sure.
and your brown bag lunches, they're asking questions, right?
Sure. All right. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Good luck. Okay.
Okay. Connecticut excess cost special education model.
So
More
say that
models.
3 times fast. I think a week or 2 ago, I sent you all a couple of documents. It's fascinating reading. I'm going to give you kind of 2 minutes on the top line, what it is, as best I can explain it, and why it's important for us to pay attention to it today. A few years ago, the Connecticut School Finance Project proposed the creation of what they describe as a captive insurance model. So it's kind of government-regulated structure for the purpose of helping manage the volatility of special education costs at the local level. What they found in their analysis was that annually at the district level, special education costs are very volatile, but when they aggregate up to the state level, they're actually not volatile, that they're relatively stable and predictable. And so the interest in creating this model that municipalities would contribute to would for the idea that districts could plan better in managing their special education costs. So a couple of years ago, a model was presented. They put together a roadshow and traveled around the state and presented to municipalities and to districts, really seeking to kind of gather support for this model. And actually what happened was people came back with more questions and worries, even though theoretically the model sounds like it would be a gift. So as the state legislature often does, rather than vote to approve or disapprove, what they did was recommend the creation of a study group. And so that study group has been meeting for a couple of years. Concurrently, I think the Connecticut School Finance Project folks went back to the drawing board and they made some revisions to the model. And so the document I sent you, I think had been shared with me earlier that day by the State Superintendents Association. And so the revised model seeks to focus exclusively on excess cost and helping districts manage excess cost. So they've narrowed in scope from the first version of the plan. It's important today because Last week, when the Education Committee met, a concept bill on this subject was approved by the Education Committee. Gail Lavielle very eloquently raised a concern about it, expressed, the worry about just the absence of information about how the model actually works and how it would impact municipalities. So she was the lone no vote on the bill because she just felt like there wasn't enough information. So, as a board of ed, as a town, we're going to need to pay attention to the progress of that bill being developed over the course of the next couple of months, because it could have a significant impact on the district and on how we fund excess cost. Some of the concerns today that were shared about this model, and they really are kind of organized around this idea of just not having enough information. So, first and foremost, I think we've been told that there are actually town-by-town model runs, but they haven't been shared. And my understanding is they haven't been shared because part of the proposal in creating this cooperative is that there would be a board of directors, and the board of directors would actually finalize the calculations in the model, the formula, and that then, once that's approved, they would share these model runs. So the worry for me, kind of beyond that, also has to do with the fact that in this model, there is an equity provision, and while I'm absolutely not opposed to equity, in the current excess cost funding, there is no equity provision. So, towns that are wealthier don't get less because they're wealthier. And that's a factor in this model. And that could have real financial implications for us in terms of funding excess cost. I think the other bigger concern, too, as we were just discussing with Ann in the monthly budget report, the state doesn't fully fund excess costs. So we're funded about 74-75%. They've been funding at about 74-75%. So, my recommendation, the recommendation of CAPS, is that the state follow through on their commitment to fully fund excess cost, and that would help address some of the burdens of excess costs if they met their obligation annually. Beyond that, we have some additional recommendations about changing the threshold Gail had introduced some legislation on our behalf last year. We hope that we'll be able to do that again this year, certainly next year, but also change that rather than bark up a tree that has a lot of unknowns. I think the other kind of final concern on that front is it's just not clear yet, and it wasn't articulated in this proposal, how the actual operating costs will be paid for if a new insurance cooperative is created. Where's the money going to come from? To actually pay for the people to operate it. Does that come out of municipal? Where does it? I'll leave it at there. Where does it come from? So, it doesn't exist today, but someone's got to pay for it at the end. So, I just want to leave you. You have the information. The information is generated by the Connecticut School Finance Project. So, understand the author. This is their baby right now. There doesn't seem to be a lot of other information available yet, but again, as it appears, I will certainly pass it on, and know that I'll be keeping in touch with Gail on this topic, and she's also watching very closely.
A cursory correlated concern that I would just have just listening to you is that there seems to be a pretty big kind of transparency and accountability factor here. So if it's that board of directors that's setting the model, how are they appointed, approved? Who are they accountable to? If the model is not something that is amenable to all districts, how do you then go about saying we'd like to relook or address that model?
That's a great question.
Well, I guess
A lot of questions.
my question, what's the purpose of this? What does it do?
Well, the purpose is to help districts like ours plan better annually with respect to managing, special education excess costs, because we never quite know.
You don't know.
always
I mean,
talk-
it's almost,
Right.
I mean, it is an art, not a science. And if they're trying to make it as a science, forget it, because you never know. You get 3 students that come into the system that weren't there when the year began, you're dead.
Right. I think,
Okay.
their analysis, as I mentioned before, that it's not volatile. When you aggregate up at the state level, there is predictability. So what they're trying to do through this this cooperative is bring predictability to the local level.
Well, how do you, I don't know, you can't do that, though.
They're trying, right? And it's a
and
concept bill in the legislature.
Yeah.
It is both predictability and equity.
Pardon?
Yeah.
It is both about predictability and equity in the use of the excess cost
Yeah.
provision. And the only thing that I would say is the current way excess cost is funded does have, albeit an imperfect, equity provision, because it's about 4.5 times the per pupil expenditure of the district.
Right,
So districts like ours that have a higher per pupil expenditure,
yeah.
already, the threshold for starting to receive excess costs
higher.
is higher. So there
Right.
is an equity
So-
provision for wealthier districts. It's albeit imperfect. This is really meant to help the very, very small towns where one student can throw you into a frenzy. Wilton is, albeit we're small, we're not that small. We're not Barkhamsted. We're not Canton. Those school districts, the ones that are on, that people are talking about forced regionalization,
Yeah.
to help them get to the size where one student won't throw their budget into a frenzy. People are looking for ways to limit the volatility, and this was one of the studies to do that. But I do think it adds an equity provision that may not be as
There's our wealth rank.
as positive to districts like Wilton.
Like us, exactly. And that's what I mean, this is the goal they've been trying to get to for some time now, is to punish us and help. Yeah, and I have all the care in the world for the small districts who are impacted. But we've got our own issues here. We deal with them, and we're lucky enough to be able to do it. Hopefully, this whole thing just is like mirrors, smoke and mirrors to me.
I think we need to watch, and we need to
Yeah.
pay attention to the
We
information
need to
that's
be well
published.
studied about it
Yeah.
before we can judge it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I read through it in detail from when you first sent it out, and it's like, huh? They're doing what now? And it just doesn't work for me.
And this
for
is
us.
far more clear than the last iteration.
Yeah.
The last iteration was Lithuanian, as far as I
Yeah.
was concerned.
Well,
Yeah.
I think this is the
Well,
state's attempt to
Yeah.
really put it to us in some ways.
Well, I think the aims might be good, but until we see a model that runs our data,
Right.
and the state certainly has the data, so we should say, okay, what would the last 5 years look like
Yeah.
with this model versus what it was like, and then how many districts gain or lose or stay the same or are helped, it just, right now I have no idea, it's a black box.
It's theoretical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it's a concept bill, what does that mean?
So they don't actually have written language yet. So I think they prove the concept, and if my understanding is accurate now, there'll be bill writers that actually put words on a page, and then they have a substantive bill to debate. And there's
Without running models, I'm not quite sure
well,
how that works.
it's,
Okay. All right, we'll wait and see then.
we'll wait and see.
Moving on.
Yeah. Well, you don't want it to end up like ECS money, to Glenn's point.
Yes.
Where, that,
This will also be a bill that they'll try to tack a lot of other things into, so
Yeah.
this would be one to be very watchful over.
yeah,
this-
exactly.
Yeah, this scares me. It does. Yeah.
Have special ed directors weighed in, or you guys don't know enough, or let's wait and see?
Yeah, we've gone to a lot of different meetings where these folks have presented to us
Oh,
and tried
okay.
to show us the model, and we present all the questions you're hearing now. Can we see it run against districts
Right.
of our like size? And we've done it as the RESC regions.
Okay.
We haven't gotten a lot of answers. They keep promising they're going to let us see our own data run in models, and we have been unable to get that as of yet for either this or the previous model. The questions we have outweigh, it does look in some ways like districts that try to do progressive in-district programming or are going to take a hit. It looks like DIRGs A and B are going to take a hit in terms of their ability to access the same percentage of excess costs that we can access now. It looks that way. And if the state further caps the excess cost provision, that's only going to get
Right.
worse. So it didn't look great to us going in, but we haven't seen it run against our own numbers. You know, in a way that they haven't presented that to us yet and shown us how it's going to help us maintain our ability to provide the services we need to our kids and decrease the volatility. We haven't seen that yet.
Okay,
So we're cautious.
sure, absolutely. Is there a scheduled update, or Do we
At this
know when we're
point,
gonna know
it's
more?
in the committee.
Okay.
And, we'll watch. So
All
it's a
right.
short session, so we'll,
all right?
it's already
Yeah.
March.
Well, let us know what, if anything, we need to do. All right, facilities 5-year draft plan.
Great, so I wanted to, this is just also more information.
Oh, okay.
So,
Got it.
I won't go into any great detail here, but you have now Jose's kind of finalized version of the rolling 5-year plan, which he'd been working on for some time. So you've heard most of the requests for fiscal '21. Those are already embedded into the budget proposal you're getting ready to vote on. The tool is helpful because as you look out over years, you get a sense of the scope of the needs of our facilities. And so just a couple of points. You'll see in some cases, I guess first just structurally, by building, the sheets are organized by, in 2 broad categories, building maintenance and then remodeling and major repairs. And then within those, you'll see a couple of categories where costs are recurring each year. And what Jose did there was, he just understands he has, for example, annual repairs that he needs to make to our alarm systems. And so he's, estimating in that case about $6,000. That's what he estimates annually. In other areas, there are costs that are one-time costs. And then you'll see as you kind of look at it in more detail, there are other projects that aren't assigned to any given year. And he included those. Some of those are major projects. Let me find an example here. So the Middlebrook Auditorium, for example, there's just, that space has a great deal of need, and so we need to have some deeper conversations, both internally but also with the town about how to manage, is that something we ought to try to bond, because it's not just the stage, it's also the rigging, the bathrooms, all kinds of things that need to be done in a space like that. There's a need for air conditioning, so finding the right way to finance it and then locating it as part of the plan are steps yet to be taken. So what he's attempted to do in working, with the respective staffs and each of the buildings is just capture a full picture and then present that full picture, and then we'll continue to look at this annually and make decisions about what we think we can afford to do and when.
Just one quick question, if I may.
Yep.
On the district page, under remodeling and major repairs, he lists bleachers, okay? It was the very first word there, under district repairs.
I see, yeah, bleachers, glass rooftop units.
What bleachers are you talking about?
I'm not sure, I'll have to ask him.
Because if it's the stadium, that should be Parks and Rec.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the stadium, no,
Was it in the field house maybe, or?
it's either Fieldhouse or Middlebrook, Cider Mill also has
Yeah, okay.
pull-out bleachers,
All right,
so.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'll check.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, great,
Yeah, it's a good
yeah.
thing to have,
Yeah.
5-year layout.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Questions, comments?
It's good. It's,
It's expensive. There's a lot.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're doing the restroom upgrade, or hopefully this time for Middlebrook, and then it's listed again under the auditorium. Are they not the same?
No, they're, yes, that, okay, so it's the same thing, right. So it's here, and he has it under Middlebrook for fiscal '21. So that's in this budget. Do you see it someplace else?
And then it comes down under auditorium,
It's listed as,
listed as lighting, AC,
Oh,
restrooms.
yeah, no, so the restroom shouldn't be there, right. Yeah, I think, this was a carryover, because we separated out the restrooms this year.
and just out of curiosity, in the carpet line above that for 230, that's distributed across the 3 years, or is that 230
Well, so we're
each year?
spending, as part of the 530 proposal for this
Right.
year, 230 of that's carpeting. Yeah, so we're gonna have additional, this really shouldn't, it's flooring replacement.
Okay.
So we're replacing with VCT tile.
Right.
So he's projecting a similar amount next
Next year and the year after that.
And then
Okay.
possibly the year after that, that's
Okay.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. The other piece, we just got, if you look above that, the asbestos removal, he'd gotten several quotes, and the most recent quote was $9 a square foot, which was far better than the original of $25 a square foot. But that abatement project's going to be significantly expensive. And so I think, when he came back and talked about this yesterday, he was thinking about completing Middlebrook over 3 years, not 2 years, just to spread some of the costs, because it's so significant.
So we don't know what next year's phase will be until this asbestos number comes in?
Correct. So so now that he's got the square footage number, he's going to go with a map of the building and do some tabulating.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
So when we had all of our meetings, we were talking about bonding versus not being able to bonding, and it had to be 250,000 or more or something like that. So now we're talking about, you had just mentioned possibly bonding or considering, like, how do we pay for our auditorium upgrade or change or whatever?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench at anything, but would it make more sense to wait and do our bathrooms with that huge
The bathrooms
project
need to be
make
done.
that number be a bond number?
Well, I think my answer to that is no, because there's a critical need there to upgrade those restrooms, and we don't have a commitment today to bond. This was something that we had talked about over the last couple of years, and as I think we talked about at a previous meeting, trying to manage the debt service. We were strongly encouraged to pay as we go. So
I think Board of Finance was happy when we couldn't bond.
Yeah. Would you want to?
I'll just make it, because I do a follow-up on that.
Mm-hmm.
The difference, and I talked to bond council on this, so that most of the projects that we look to do, we run through bond council to say, is this a bondable one or not? Because
Okay.
there's actually statutes or laws that allow you to bond certain things or not, and the length of time. So it's not always just what the dollar amount is, although the town keeps it $250 as a project.
Yeah.
The difference between some of the things we're doing, both town and Board of Ed side, it has to be a major renovation. So when Miller Driscoll was done in the major renovation there, we were able to bond things like painting, carpet, ceiling tiles, because it was a major renovation. When you're doing what we're doing now,
Repairs.
it's not considered. Because I ran through the scenarios of what we were doing,
Right.
and he goes, under statute, you actually wouldn't be allowed to do that.
So you're not basically gutting the bathrooms and redoing
It's not,
them
but
and
you're
adding the ADA?
replacing, you're not taking all these walls down and
You're
redoing
not
major
recreating
renovations.
So even
It's
though
not
you're
like you're,
moving all the fixtures and all the tiles and?
yep, that's all considered repair and maintenance. It's not a renovation.
But we're putting ADA in there, aren't we?
We will. Yes. One of
Oh,
the-
yeah, so it is, but it's still not considered a major renovation. So a lot of municipalities, what they'll do is they'll actually do a major renovation when they really want to do some other projects that are high ticket, like a $600,000-700,000. They'll actually blow that up and try and get approval to do a major renovation so that they can get these things they normally wouldn't get bonded into a bonded practice. So, but everything we're doing now, we're running through bond council just to make sure it is, because we may assume it and then say it's gonna go to bonded, and they'll come back and I produce, the document saying this is what, because I have to give them, when I go out bonding every year, I have to, even though, say, we approve it at the town council, when it comes to bonding, they could say, you can't bond this. So we get it up front before we do anything to make sure what we're putting on the actual bonded schedule is an allowable project.
But we can go back and ask questions, because if you get an asbestos removal number and you get a floor replacement number, at some point, it sounds like it ought to be bondable.
They won't go by the dollar amount. They're going by what are you doing? You're replacing the flooring.
Yeah, typically flooring replacement is not a bondable
Right,
task.
and it
But
was.
even at that scale, and you're removing
No.
asbestos,
What the bond count, it was, I shouldn't say it's funny, but when I asked that question, I said, can you pose it, find out the laws behind it. He said, Wilton asked in 2012, Wilton asked in 2014, 16, I asked in 17, 18 because we were doing cider mill, and I just called again. So he goes,
Maybe
when?
ask again.
And he goes, when's the next time you're gonna ask again? The same question on, can we do
Next year
carpet? Can
might
we?
change, you never know.
So he sent forward his, he sent over his, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, his recommendation, his ruling on why we could or couldn't do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
action items. Discuss and approve the superintendent's proposed budget.
You have a chair's report?
After. Okay, so first of all, this is an important vote, as we all know. And I do want to thank Dr. Smith and all the principals and the cabinet members and Anne and Mary Ann and everybody, Lucille, and I'm sure I'm leaving out people, so I apologize. But I know the staff worked since at least October into January, compiling this budget. Since then, we have heard, as a board, 2 presentations on it. We've had 3 workshops. We've had 1 meeting to deliberate. And we've had a joint meeting with the Board of Finance. There are over, 80 questions posted on the website. So again, thanks to the staff for compiling those written answers. And it's now time for us to vote. So, having said that, how about is there a motion to approve the budget, and then we'll each have a chance to add comments if we wish.
I make a motion to approve the budget.
Second.
Discussion. Any comments?
Yeah. I guess, if you look at it in reality, it's a budget presentation that's slightly less than a 2% increase over the prior year. And if you look at our performance over the past 2 or 3 years, where we've been flat, less than 2% off, our performance against other systems in the DIRG over the last 5 years has been, I think, phenomenal. We're delivering a great product. As you commented earlier, the students that you called out earlier, 6 national merit finalists, the 2 young ladies, we turn out great students, and it doesn't happen cheaply to do that. We excel in the arts, music, sports. Academically, we're making progress in all measures of our performance, our AP scores, et cetera, et cetera. And I was troubled by the fact that we did not get guidance from the Board of Finance this year. They left it to us to come forward with a budget, and we did, with a budget that I think Dr. Smith and the entire staff feel strongly about. We have some significant challenges in front of us. We have even more significant goals in front of us, what we want our graduate to be. We worked hard to define that. And we have deliverables that we have defined. This is what we want, and this is what we need. And this budget takes us in that direction. And I'm sure that if we had a fully open, you can do whatever you want, the budget would probably be significantly higher than what it is. But you've exercised, I think, great judgment and great restraint, and have figured out how to do the things that we've said we're going to do well within reason from a financial perspective, and a growth in our budget. Less than 2% increase in the face of, across the board, 3% increases in our teacher contract, et cetera. I think it's remarkable. I'm thrilled. Now, it remains to be seen how the Board of Finance is going to view it. But from my perspective, I fully support this, and I think I would like to think that the township would also. Year after year, we've consistently come forward with budgets lower than comparable schools in our DIRG, and that's what they want from us. And this is another one that reaches that goal.
Thank you, Glenn. And I had one question. Last time we talked, we had asked, are you sure that we're allocating money in the right places? And I think we had raised digital learning and technology. We had also asked a question about staffing levels, and the only specific we had there was looking at the athletic trainer. And I know you have had a chance to consider, and we're not seeing any change numbers, so you must be happy with the way it is.
I am. This is the budget that we proposed. I think, collectively, we think it's the budget that'll meet our goals.
Okay. All right. Further questions, discussion? All right. All in favor of the budget?
Aye.
Aye. Happily so. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, now comes my chairman's report. And guess what it's about? So, I'm happy to say that we just approved the superintendent's proposed 2020 to 21 budget. It's now officially the proposed Board of Ed budget. I think I speak for all board members when I say the budget balances student educational needs with fiscal responsibility for taxpayers. The budget supports our standards for excellence in education and aligns with our mission and goals. The budget moves us forward at a reasonable pace towards achieving our vision for all graduates. The budget supports best practices for education in the 21st century and reflects our understanding that education differs significantly from the 1980s and 1990s. Specifically, this year's budget, or next year's proposed budget, enables us to maintain reasonable class sizes, ensures highly skilled teachers by attracting and retaining the most talented candidates, and then significantly investing in their training. It supports a powerful, award-winning digital learning environment through the grades and the required hardware, software, and security to go with it. It provides in-district special education services pre-K to age 21, most notably this year with the addition of the Genesis program. It continues programming and training to ensure healthy and safe social-emotional environments at all school levels. It continues math course sequence revisions at Middlebrook. It updates and adds Wilton High School courses in world language, media, social studies, and math. And it begins significant, long-needed facilities renovations at Middlebrook. From here, our proposed budget goes to the Board of Finance, which will conduct a public hearing and deliberate over a final proposal to present to voters in May. We, of course, hope that our budget proposal remains unchanged. What will happen if it's not, and instead the budget is reduced? Our choices become difficult at that point. So reductions, moving from perhaps minor to more major, is first, I'm sure the team would start nickel and diming. For example, make further cuts in supplies and materials and equipment. But we heard during our budget workshops concern from principals that they have seen the results of those types of budgets reduced in the past few years. We are at basic levels there already. Or reductions will slow our progress. For example, teacher training in literacy and/or math and/or special education practices and/or assessments will be delayed. Or digital learning resources will be curtailed. Or school climate and social emotional training and initiatives will just have to wait. Or reductions end up by kicking the can down the road. So we could put off or draw out the much-needed facilities work at Middlebrook, which will only increase expenses and delay addressing the high school needs, also on our table. And we could look at postponing new programs, as almost happened with the Genesis program this year. Or we could walk back our newer programs. We just added digital learning specialists to our media centers at Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill. Maybe we would undo that. We recently added some math time at Middlebrook for special topics that we couldn't get to. Do we undo that? Or we make special ed wait. We have traded in our budget 4 paraprofessionals for 4 certified teachers. Do we hold off more expert instruction to save on the salary differential? And of course, if reductions are extreme or draconian, then the worst happenings by threatening staff levels. And we get into things we don't like to talk about at all, anywhere from increasing class sizes to reducing co-curricular and other elective programs. Another reason not to reduce this proposal is remember the last 5 years of our school budget increases. 2015-16 was 1.98%. 2016-17 was 0.77%. 2017-18 was 0%. 2018-19 was 1.62%. 2019-20, this year's, was 0%. But of course, thank goodness, the Board of Finance decided to take $468,000 from the town charter, which, had it been in our budget, would have made the budget, or the increase for our current budget, I think it's about 0.6% increase. So again, this is now the Board of Ed proposed budget for 2021 that we will bring to the Board of Finance. We will need public involvement and support during the next steps. So I urge everyone to please make your views known to the Board of Finance. Attend the public hearing in March and/or email them or us, and encourage your friends to do the same, because we're in this together. Thanks. Okay,
You said it was.
well, I have all the time. Okay. Next meeting, enrollment. Are there comments from the public? All right, having gotten through our agenda or finished the agenda, seeing no public comments, we are adjourned.